Hey guys, one of the most requested tutorials in my message box and in comments is color correction or color grading tutorials. That's why I decided to do a few of these, and in each tutorial I'm going to go through a new program. So today I'm going to start talking about Red Giant Mojo. I'm going to go through all the settings, what they do, and what this plugin can be used for. So we're going to start looking at this clip. It's from our movie The Day After. Maybe you have seen the teaser. This is some of the footage that wasn't in the teaser, but it will be in the final production. If I just turn on the Mojo effect here, you can see what a quick default color correction could look like. That's with the Mojo plugin turned on and with the Mojo plugin turned off. What color correction really is a way to change the color of the light when you film a movie or a television series, or when you light the stage. You can use different colored gels and different devices to correct the light. But it's also when you do it in post-production, when you change the color of the light, the contrast, the saturation, etc., etc. Some people also like to call it color grading. We're not going to go into the differences between those today. We'll just call it color correction. So now we're going to take a look at Red Giant's Magic Bullet Mojo. You can see the plugin here to the right. Over here we have a few different sliders here. First we have the Mojo controls. That's these three. We have the It controls. And then we have two other controls. So now I'm going to start talking about these three controls. What we want when we color correct footage is cool shadows and midtones and warm highlights. And that's a good recipe for getting that Hollywood look, the blockbuster look. We're going to start with some sort of cooler shadow midtone look and a warmer highlight look for this. So the first slider, that's a good way to start with that one. This one cools off your shadows and warms your highlights. A higher value here means cooler midtones and shadows and warmer highlights. Like you can see here, if I have it at 0, I get those kind of warm midtones and colors. But if I raise it, the midtones and shadows gets cooler. The second slider here, that changes the shadows and the midtones. If I drag it to a positive value, I get a greenish tint. And if I drag it to a negative value, I get a bluish tint. This slider is good when you want to sort of change the color of the color correction. If you want to have a cold green tint, or if you want to have a kind of a cold blue tint. The best value to use here is something in between. The next slider here, the Mojo Balance, that moves the boundary between the shadows and the midtones and the highlights. As you can see now, all the highlights are kind of blue, and that's because we moved the boundary, the threshold of where the shadow and midtones go over to the highlights. If you lower this, you will get more flesh tones, and if you raise this, you will get more shadow and midtones. The next slider here, the Warm It slider, that adds red and yellow tones. If you drag it to a positive value, if you increase it, and it adds blue and green tones if you drag it to a negative value. That will make a warmer picture or a colder picture. The next slider, the punch it slider, adds more contrast to the image. If you increase it, you'll get a more contrasty picture, and if you decrease it, you will get a more washed out picture, since you take away some of the contrast. This will give a more punch to the picture, will make for a more interesting picture. The next slider, the bleach it slider, controls the saturation of the picture. If you decrease the slider, you will get a more saturated picture, and if you increase it to a positive value, you will get a more desaturated picture. At 100%, you'll get a black and white picture. The next few sliders here, under the skin tab, is for working with skin colors. I'm not going to go through that today, since that's a chapter by its own. But it's a really nice feature to have if you have some odd skin tones that you want to enhance. There's also this slider, blend with original, and what that does is, if I do a bit strange color correction here, I can choose how much this is blended with the original picture. It's maybe a bit like an opacity function. Okay, so now I have given you a quick run through of the sliders of Mojo, but I guess the big question you have is, oh, we know the sliders, but what should we aim for? I can't tell you that, because that depends on what kind of emotion you want to deliver with your movie. Are you making a horror movie, a drama, or a comedy? It all depends on what kind of movie you're making, because if you're making a comedy, maybe you shouldn't have a cold bleached out picture. Maybe then you should go for something a bit more saturated. It all depends on what kind of style of movie you're making. But a good idea of what to aim for is to work on the levels of black. If I do like that, that would be a bad color correction, because the black levels look almost gray. So be careful with the black, with the levels of black. Also, be sure to keep all the black levels visible, if you know what I mean. If you take a look at this here, over here, you see it's almost melted into the background. It depends on the movie you're making. Maybe that's what you aim for. But a good idea is to be careful with the levels of black. If you have any questions about this, please post them in the comments. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe. This was a quick look at Mojo, and the next time I will probably take a look at Colorista 2. With that program we will go into more details, how we can change the midtones and the shadows separately, as well as the highlights. Mojo is kinda generic, and it allows you to do quick color corrections, but you don't have that control that you have in Colorista. So we will probably take a look at Colorista next time. Until then, have fun, and please comment and ask questions and subscribe, etc., etc. Okay, take care.